We're speaking today on this potentially historic day to George Shirinian, Executive Director of the Zoryan Institute, who is in Canada but joining us by Skype today. Today's discussion, of course, revolves around what the French Senate will be discussing, whether or not to criminalize denial of the Armenian Genocide. George, thank you for joining us. We'll start with this. What is the Zoryan Institute's position, or maybe your position, on this bill?
Zoryan does have an official position, which we took when the issue first came up back in 2006. We're all for anything that opens up the debate and allows people to discuss what happened in 1915. Of course, we strongly believe, based on our 30 years of research, that what happened was indeed genocide. But we are concerned that as the purpose of criminalizing genocide denial is not really properly addressed by this particular law. We understand when the Gay Soul Law was introduced in 1990, it was in an atmosphere when neo-Nazism and the skinhead movement was rampant in Europe and France. The nature of genocide denial is different in the Armenian case. Genocide denial occurs in France, certainly, but its source is in Turkey. Now, as is well known, we have this infamous Article 301 in the Turkish Penal Code, which criminalizes anyone who dares speak of the Armenian genocide there. And Zoryan, along with many other people, decry that. But we have difficulty explaining to Turkish society, why is it okay to deny free speech as they would see it in France? But the Turkish government can't deny people the right to speak openly about the Armenian genocide in Turkey. So it's a question of consistency, in one sense, trying to get the Turkish civil society, which is still basically not well informed on this issue, to be able to open up and discuss it and be willing to learn about it. So that's our position.
In regards to that, that of course brings up the point of how can a state, or is it the state's job more specifically, to, I don't want to go as direct as limit free speech, but put a hamper on that kind of thing? Is it the state's job to do something like that?
Well, the state's job is to protect its citizens. And there's no doubt that genocide denial does harm people. It's often called the last stage of genocide because it tries to eliminate any record of what happened. It prevents justice taking place. And certainly it exacerbates the psychological trauma as an after effect of genocide. So in that sense, yes, governments and states should get involved in dealing with genocide denial. But how they do it, I think there are other alternatives.
Which is a perfect opportunity to ask you more specifically, what are those other alternatives?
Well, Zoryan is devoted to education, research, publication, and we have for the last 30 years been deeply involved in producing the documentation, the analysis, publications. We run educational programs that explore what happened in 1915, and as I said, affirm that genocide took place. And I think that's the way to get people to understand it. So by going back to sources which they would perceive to be unimpeachable, Turkish sources, Ottoman sources, we are slowly putting out into the field books and other documents that show what truly happened.
General intuition, probably more from an outside perspective rather than an Armenian perspective, would be a bill like this is Armenian driven. The vast majority of Armenians would be in favor of this. It seems almost counterintuitive to hear an institute like the Zoryan Institute say this is not a positive thing. Can you talk a little on that?
Well, I'm not sure that this bill is Armenian driven. You know, the Armenian population in France is estimated at around 500,000. In a country with a population of around 50 million, that's not exactly a powerful political force. I think there are other factors which are bringing the French government to bring this law forward at this time. And it's never a good thing if the Armenian Genocide, which is a historical fact, gets treated like a political football.
Let's finish with this. It sounds to me, maybe I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong, it sort of sounds as if, based on what the Zoryan Institute's mission is, the direction is towards Turkey and the Turkish people. And tell me, is this bill a distraction? Is distraction too big a word for what this is?
Well, you could say it's a distraction because it's driving the Turkish government crazy, and they're making all kinds of wild gestures to try and intimidate the French government. It doesn't do Turkey any good because it only makes them look bad in the eyes of the world.
That's a great way to put it. Thank you so much, George Shirinian, for joining us today. We are all watching closely as to what will happen today in France. And we'll continue to talk to you down the line, and we continue to thank you for the efforts that the Zoryan Institute puts forward. So thank you.